So, welcome everybody to the Dream Workshop, a workshop for the National Hope Movement Conference today on Bell's Let's Talk Day, January 28th, 2021. In the introduction that you may have seen on the National Hope Talks website, I talk about Dream being a three-course program, the Being Prosperous program. I'm not going to talk so much about the program, but about this idea of Dream itself. Too often when we are young adults, the path we take in life is dictated by what is expeditious at the moment, or what might even seem to be the only possibility. Dreams we have when we were younger as children are set aside as being impractical. We stop believing that we can shape our future. What's worse is we don't take time to fully think through the impacts that our choices will have 10 or 15 years into the future. Making deliberate choices about how our lives can and will be is something that we hardly ever take time to do. And yet that is so important. We're going to get into that during this little workshop. Because by doing that is how we get to write our next chapters, as we wish them to be, and how we will experience the life that we really want. So, in this workshop, there are three takeaways that I want you to have. One is how you see yourself, how you picture yourself. The second is dream, and I'll spend quite a bit on that one slide when we get to it, to create an attractive vision for yourself, for your future. And the third thing is to begin. And I'll cover that very briefly at the end with a lovely quotation, which I hope will inspire you as it has inspired me for years. And why this? Why this dream? It's so that you can savor life. So the outline, what we're going to cover today. We'll do the introduction first about why this is so important. And I mentioned before, it will determine how much you savor life rather than suffer life. I'll talk about being prosperous, the overall process of dream, design, and create. There are 3 steps, and it takes you a while to actually go through that process. Like I said, I will spend a lot of time on dream itself, on choosing deliberately those experiences that you want to have. By that time, it'll be about 45 minutes into the workshop. We'll do some Q&A. Louise will be summarizing the questions. And then we'll finish up with looking ahead. And Addison Brazil has shown up as well. I'll be talking about Tether a little bit at the end, and Addison will speak about that. As I said earlier, it's so important because this is going to impact how much you savor life and not suffer life. That free will stuff we hear about? This is where it starts, with the dream. When I was kicking off Play at Creation a long time ago, and I was talking to people about starting ventures and so on, solopreneurs, there was a lot of talk about how they were feeling overwhelmed and despair and so on. The way we look at life, I mean, the circumstances we are now experiencing, which I'm going to talk about in a little bit, depends upon the situation we were born into. Some were born to very rich families. Some were born in India to very poor families. Some were born in Canada to middle-class families. And the circumstances of each of the families are different. Then as we go through life, we experience different things, okay? And some of them can be traumatic, and some of them can be beneficial and uplifting. So traumatic means it could be psychologically or emotionally stressful in a way that can lead to serious mental and emotional problems. When you're younger, everything feels very, very intense, and you are greatly impacted by the things that happen to you. You take action, you build up defenses against the things that hurt you, but sometimes those have to be left behind. Because if you keep applying those defenses that you built up, they start detracting from the kind of life that you could have. And finally, the other thing that determines, the circumstances we're experiencing are choices that we make when we're much younger, even as teenagers, for instance, when we are very impressionable without much experience of the world. We don't know what those choices are going to have on us, on our lives in the future. And we end up experiencing some of the pain, like we kind of know what we'd like to do, to be, to do, to have. Uh, However, we might be directionless, easily distracted. There's so many attractive things, so many possibilities for us. We can't decide what it is that we really should do. Or, having made a choice one way, we might be nervous about making another choice, which might leave us in a similarly bad situation. As a result, we end up feeling overwhelmed with a sense of dread of life, of living. And we want to move from that to gain, to a place where we know exactly what it is we want to be, do, and have. We're focused, we make some decisions, we focus, we know where we're going. We have some momentum along that path, and we feel confident. We know that we can do this. Okay, so this is what we want. This is the transition I want for everybody to have, is to go from those feelings of pain to one of gain. Now, why this is so important? It's because how you see yourself is all just thought. Thought that's been shaped by what's happened to you over the last little while, last 10, 15 years perhaps, by things that you've seen your friends experience, trauma. It creates a mindset. This is how you see yourself. And the very first thing I want you to do is question this, because thought is something that you can control. You can change. Thoughts are things that you have. You are not your thoughts. Okay, this idea that you can control the thoughts that are going on in your head. When you're older, as I am, it kind of makes more sense. When you're younger, you have these thoughts coming at you all the time, and you think that you cannot control them, but you can. And I want to show you a frame of reference that you might adopt to have that. I want you to see yourself as a powerful creator, as a creator, not the victim of circumstances. Okay, you have control over what happens to you. Now think about, and I'm going to go here with something that I haven't talked to a lot of people about, to a few people, but my sons, I have 3 sons, and they love playing games. And typically when you play a video game, you you create a character, an avatar for yourself in the game. You design this avatar with certain powers. I don't play games, so I'm not sure exactly how it works, but I think you get a certain number of points, and then you allocate those points to, defensive things, to spells that you can cast, to how strong you are, etc. So what I'm suggesting to you is that you adopt a slightly different frame of reference for your life and think of everything that's been experienced here as your avatar's story. I want you to come up a level and think of the earth as a game board on which your avatar is experiencing the stories that you've created for it. So you are not your avatar. You are the creator of your avatar story. So this is going to put a little bit of separation between everything that's happening to the body and personality that you see when you look in the mirror, and yourself, the powerful creator who can decide what that avatar is going to experience. Especially for younger people who play a lot of games, I hope this is not a stretch. Okay, so you are now imagining yourself playing a higher level video game. The game board is Earth. The avatar is what you see in the mirror. And you are writing the story. You are playing that avatar on this game board. And it's up to you to craft better experiences and outcomes for your avatar. So your transformation is in fact your game. Okay, you've created an avatar that has certain strengths and weaknesses which have come about over these last few years, 10, 15 years. And you now find yourself looking at this avatar going, okay, so this avatar he's strong in these areas, he's weak in these areas. What are you going to do about that? How do you, creator, see your avatar? What is that avatar's self-talk? We're going to talk about this in a little bit more detail. What are its beliefs? Are they limiting because of traumatic experiences, or are they supporting because of very good experiences that they've had? And then you can also be looking at the future state. How might you want to refine your avatar? How might you want it to be in the future? What do you want it to do? What would you like it to have? And by the way, just because you've drawn some separation between you, the creator, the writer of its story, and the avatar, you can pop into the avatar anytime you want and experience what it's experiencing. It's just what you should be gathering by now is that you can separate yourself a little bit from the avatar so that you don't have to be experiencing what it's experiencing all the time. So your transformation, this game, yes, in going from where you are now to where you will be, there will be challenges. But this is what makes this game interesting. Perhaps you don't want to have as many challenges as you are having right now. We'll look at how you deal with that. But anyway, it's the challenges that make the game interesting. Change can be scary. You know, what you have grown accustomed to is comfortable. Okay, you're there now. You go, okay, I understand this. I know what to expect. As soon as you start saying, I want to be like that, that change is scary. And there might be things in the way. You know, you've got to earn a living right now, for instance. How the heck can you go and get further education? How can you switch from doing this kind of role to another kind of role? Well, one of the things is with purposeful practice. Whenever we start something new, I use the word, I know I'm going to suck at it. You know, shooting baskets, for instance. When I first start shooting baskets, I'm not going to hit most of them. However, with purposeful practice, with having that goal in mind of sinking baskets and that purposeful practice, I will hit more and more of them. I will sink more and more baskets. That's the idea behind purposeful practice. And also to be thinking that you are playing your avatar. Okay. Now that avatar can have a group around it, just like you, the author, the story creator, can have a group of your friends around you. And we'll see why that's important. It's important because you have supporters. You have people who are on your side. It could be your parents, could be your siblings, your friends, others who are on the same journey, who are your squad, your crew, friends who have your back. So when you're thinking about this change that you want to make, think about who's on your side, you know, who's already proved that they are there to support you. And with them, create your support systems. It could be a mastermind group that you create, a big name for, you know, you get together online now with the COVID, you get together and you talk every week or so about what's happening in your lives and what you're doing about it. But it starts with creating your crew or your squad or your gang. When Addison talks about tether and how you can build a crew on that, it's important, okay? You have to know, though, that you are not alone in this game. So we've talked about why this is important. I want to talk to you next about the overall process of becoming and being prosperous. Okay, there's a three-step process. By the way, before I get into that, being prosperous it's not just financial. You know, when you see a term like prosperity, you think in terms of money. I've got boats and cars, I've got this fancy house, etc. But that's not all it is. The more important pieces are things like physical, your body. And when I talk about physical or health, it's not just physical, but also mental. So the mental game, that's another aspect in which you can be prosperous. Emotional and spiritual. And in all of these, you can learn how to be prosperous. And you need to have all of those aspects dealt with so that you can, in fact, have a well-lived life. It isn't sufficient to just have lots of money to be rich. There are lots of people who devote all their time to becoming very wealthy, to having lots of wealth, lots of doodads, really. And they suffer because the other pieces haven't been dealt with. So you need to deal with all of those. By the same token, you have people who are not wealthy, but they have wonderful support systems, wonderful communities, and they are really happy in spite of not having a lot of great wealth. So physical is both the body and the mind. Emotional. Now, one of the things you have to realize, remember coming back to the creator of stories, you not being the avatar. Emotions are things that your avatar experiences. You, as the author, as the observer of what the avatar is doing, do not have to get pulled under by those emotions. Now, when you go into your avatar to experience what it is experiencing, you will experience those emotions, whether they're sad or happy, whatever. This is where you go into experience to savor life. Mental, again, I mentioned thoughts, thoughts that are coming into you. You are not your thoughts. You have thoughts, but you are not your thoughts. And you can control the thoughts that you entertain. You probably heard the story of the two wolves, and it's the wolf that gets fed. That's the winner. That's the champion. Well, that story is about the thoughts. Which thoughts do you entertain? The ones that you entertain, meaning you keep thinking about, are the ones that win out. And the reason that we'll get into dream later on is so that you can have this attractive vision, these attractive thoughts that you can go to rather than looking at what you've come from. And finally, spiritual. How do you relate to the one power? And there are so many different religions and so on. And I'm not talking about religion, I'm talking about spirit. What I believe, for instance, is that we are spiritual beings here having a physical experience. And hence my driving force, the core of my being, is that I am here to savor life's experiences. I am a spark of consciousness here to savor being physical. In each of these areas, financial, physical, emotion, mental, and spiritual, you can have limiting beliefs that hold you back from savoring life. And these beliefs are developed when we are very young. They get instilled in us by our parents, by the community, by school, by society around us to protect us. Okay, people who have come before us know that this is how things need to happen for you to be safe, for the community to be safe. However, as circumstances change, and right now circumstances are changing dramatically with COVID, the trends that I was watching and expecting to play out over 10 or 15 years have been collapsed into a year or two. So what would have been a smooth trend, a smooth transition from where we are now to where we would have been 10 or 15 years from now, it's almost like a step change, right? You're down here at this one level. All of a sudden, because of COVID and our reactions to COVID, you're going to come out at a totally different level, okay? And we might talk about that a little bit more. Now, the overall process for being prosperous, it's a 3-step process. The full journey involves first dream, which we're going to talk about today, to choose deliberately those experiences that you want to pursue on purpose to have a well-lived life, for you to really savor life. And you choose, for each person is going to be slightly different. You choose for yourself, how are you going to savor life? What experiences? The second part, once you've chosen deliberately, is to design very carefully the ventures, the adventures that are going to deliver those experiences to you. And I purposely use the term venture, not business, because for some people, this might be, they want to teach music to a certain population. They want to start a school in Guatemala. They want to create an orphanage in Egypt. By the way, these are real examples from people that I've talked to of things that are actually happening. Another one of our people, she wanted to build communities, small communities of affordable, sustainable housing for boomers as they were retiring. Because not everybody has a lot of money, so they needed to have homes that were easy to maintain. They wanted to have community, etc. So this was her example of a venture that she wanted to create. And then the last piece is, having designed your venture or adventure, is to then take action to create it, to act decisively, having made a conscious choice, then to pursue that and make it happen. Today, we're just going to talk about the dream piece. But this is how these three parts fit together, okay? You'll have part one, which is dream, choosing your experiences. Part two is to design your venture. And then part three is to make it real. And this may take 18 months to 2 years. It'll depend on different people, on how grandiose perhaps your venture is. It could be, I just want to move from doing this kind of work to doing that kind of work. How do I get the education and experience to make that transition, right? For younger people, it may be more along those lines rather than for older people. Like myself, for instance, once you retire, we have a lot less urgency around having to earn an income, while we make these transitions. So that's why it's different for different people. So we've talked about why this is so important. We've talked about the being prosperous, the overall process. Now we're going to talk about dream, the first piece, about choosing deliberately. And I'm going to spend quite a bit of time here on the various exercises that you can do at this stage for dream. It involves a lot of reflection on what you've been through, contemplation of what's made you feel good or not, and then conscious, deliberate choice about what you are going to pursue going forward. Now, the first thing that we have to do is to face facts, to take a look at our current state. Okay, what circumstances are we in? What circumstances does the avatar experience today because of choices that were made years ago? So for the current state, we do an assessment. We assess our financial state. You've got so much money in the bank, there's so much money coming in, there's so much money going out. You should have some kind of budget that gives you an indication of, okay, here's where we are. This is what we need to have going forward. You look at the knowledge that you've gained from education, perhaps from training that you've had in your current job, the experience that you've had in your current job. You look at the contacts that you've made over the years. These could just be social. They could also be to do with your career. And the contacts are important because these people who you know are the ones who will greatly help you transition to your future state. You're going to look at the self-talk. I talked about the financial, mental, physical, spiritual, emotional. Well, each one of those things, when you look at how you think about those aspects, you may come across or realize that you had certain beliefs that are quite limiting. For instance, you might have the belief that, if you're 65, well, it's too late to start anything. And I can't make any money now because, while I'm retired. Well, what's happening now is that there is this trend to vibrant longevity. I tell people who are 60 to 65 that you're going to live to be 100. You better have things that you are doing now and in the years ahead, not only to pay your way in retirement, in air brackets, but also to stay engaged. If you're young, the other part of that limiting belief is I'm too young to start a venture, right? And you see many young Turks who have started things, and you don't have to go out and build the next Facebook. You can start ventures that serve you and the people around you. Once we've looked at where we are, by the way, one of the phrases that I adopted last year from a show, I think it was The Irishman, it is what it is. Okay, you have to face facts that I am in this circumstance. It is what it is. However, you don't stop there, because right after that you say, now what am I going to do about it? And the do about it is some of the next stuff. So the next piece is about meaningful play. And you'll see that the name of my venture is Play at Creation. I believe that's why we are here, is strictly to play and to create. When you adopt this mindset of everything, this is all a game, everything is play, it allows you to start things without being an expert in them. When I started Play at Creation, I didn't know anything about the latest, social media, how to create videos, how to create courses, but I knew I would learn as I went along. Okay, and play doesn't need to be inconsequential. It can be very intense. I think of play, for instance. I don't climb mountains, but if you are a mountain climber and you're on the face of a cliff, well, you better be playing at 110%. Otherwise, you're going to fall off. Okay, and you'll find that the more intensely you play, the more alive you'll feel. That's why we're here. Okay, to face and overcome challenges, physical challenges. By the way, you'll realize that it is also a game, because when you get to the top of the mountain, you feel the euphoria of having climbed that mountain, having overcome that challenge. But almost immediately you start looking at what's the next? What's the next challenge? That's just the way we're built. So when you are playing meaningfully, I've talked about the fact that it can be pretty intense. But in any game that you play, there are rules and skills that you have to master, rules of the game. So in rugby, for instance, you'll have one team, 15 playing against another team. There are rules about how the game is played. You have to know those rules to be able to play. There are also skills. And depending upon the kind of body you have in rugby, you could be a really hulking brute, or you could be somebody who's smaller and light, who's able to run a lot more quickly and with more agility. Same with American football, Canadian football. You could be a lineman, you could be a running back, you could be a quarterback. All these different positions depend upon your body structure, the skills that you have. Okay, and skills are things that can be learned. There are also, and I touched on this before, call them challenges, but there are also surprises. In any game, what makes it interesting are the surprises. The quarterback throws a pass, it gets tipped by somebody, and he gets intercepted. Right? All of a sudden, the game changes. Now you've got the guy who's got the ball, if he doesn't get tackled right away, running down to perhaps score a touchdown. Or what happened in the Chiefs game, the last Chiefs game, where this fellow who is there to receive the kickoff drops it, at like 5 yards from the goal yard, and he's never done this. Surprise! At the other end, when the center hikes the ball and it goes over the head of the quarterback, surprise! This guy's been doing it for years. This never happened before. It's an interesting game now. All of a sudden. Now, the other thing is when you are looking at the roles that you can play, you can be a parent, mother, father, a sibling. There are other roles that you can play when you join with your crew to start up a venture. Addison, for instance, is a co-founder of Tether. Well, there are other people who are playing in those games, playing different roles. Those are other aspects that you'll think about, and you'll see when we talk about the personal North Star, which is kind of like a guide. I'll show you a picture later on and show you where the roles fit in and facets that you can choose. Now, one of the other things that we have to deal with is values and beliefs. Touched on this as well a little bit. When we are very young, we are programmed with values. These come from our parents. They come from the family around us, the extended family. They come from the community that we find ourselves in, perhaps the religion, the church that we go to, the mosque, and society in general. But we have to remember that this is us, humanity, humans, playing with how we organize ourselves. And in different societies, they will hold different values because those are the things that keep the people in that society safe. Now, your values and beliefs shape your attitudes and behavior, and your behaviors shape the results that you experience. If you want to experience different results, it's very hard if you keep just trying to change the behavior, the stuff that's on the outer edge, if you don't deal with your values and beliefs. If your behaviors have to be in opposition to what your values and beliefs are, it'll be very hard to maintain that behavior. So when we look at this stuff, we need to go back and look at how we've been programmed, question those to see if those are still serving us. Do those still make sense in the current situation that we find ourselves in the way the world has been transformed? Or do we need to go back and choose our values and our beliefs that now allow us to operate in the current world situation? Remember, I talked about trends being collapsed into a step change? That's what's happening now. And we are going to have to transform how we operate as individuals, as families, as churches, as towns in this new way of being. The next thing we look at is the energy. What is it that gives you energy or saps your energy? And the way I've described it is what excites you or what angers you. Now, you could look at games you like playing, things you like reading about. What are things that capture your interest? If you are browsing on the internet and you find yourself going down a rabbit hole about something that's really interesting. So for me, for instance, it's future technologies, and the stuff that Elon Musk is doing with, this is private enterprise playing in space, building rockets that are in future. It's going to be him, Jeff Bezos, maybe some other people who are going to be taking us into space. Maybe who takes us out to Mars is Elon Musk and his boys, and not NASA or the Chinese space agency, right? So that's one of the things that excites me. Another one is music. So I'm now learning to play ukulele, and so I'm excited by that. I spend a lot of time on that. For other people, it may be, how do we choose to organize ourselves politically? What kinds of groups do we organize ourselves into? That's exciting. What is it that excites you? And what that points to is, where do you want to be spending your time in the years ahead, so that you get to play with those kinds of things. On the other hand, there could be other stuff that really angers you, that pisses you off. You look at it and you say, this should not be this way. This is something that needs to be fixed. Okay? If you find something that angers you, you've identified something that that is happening in our world that needs to be fixed, and you say, okay, that's where I'm going to spend my time. The protests that happened around the way blacks are treated in the States. Now, that is not just in the States. This is something global. But after George Floyd got killed, and there were protests, demonstrations all over the place, people found that they were thinking, and there was mostly young people, by the way, saying this is wrong. This needs to be fixed. So that is something that that's angered people, and people will start spending time around that. Another thing to look at is, what is it that gives you joy? That has given you joy from the earliest memories that you have until now. Okay, um, this is what's giving you joy or happiness so far. And I ask you to think back, see if you can come up with the top 10 things that gave you enjoyment. And then make some choices about, so which of those do you want to experience going forward? Do you want to experience some more of stuff that's already given you joy? Or can you look at some of the intersections of things that gave you joy and say, okay, I want to try some of that going forward? Like for me, for instance, I want to try learning an instrument. Or perhaps you want to learn a different language, or you want to do different kind of work. You have a hobby that you really enjoy, and you say, I wonder if I could earn my living by doing this kind of thing for lots of other people. Okay, so you're choosing the kinds of experience going forward. Now, having been through all this, looking at meaningful play, looking at your values and beliefs, what excites you, what angers you, what joy has been and will be. Now you make some deliberate choices. Now, one of the things is that you cannot do everything that you want. You don't have enough time. So you have to make some choices. And that's one of the reasons when I show you the personal North Star, this is one 8.5 piece of paper on which you put all of this stuff. So you do have to leave stuff off. Now, one of the exercises that we do is you create a list of 25 things that you want to do, be, or have. And then you go through that and you measure them one against the other, and you come up with the top 5. Right? So you have a list of 5 things to do, be, or have. The other 20 are your avoid list. These are things that you don't put any effort towards, because all your effort is, you need to focus on a few things to be able to make that happen. Now, it's very interesting because you may find that having made your choices about, these are my to-dos and these are my avoids, you end up spending time on numbers 6 and 7, which is, part of the 20. And so, but that's fine. I mean, it's your life. You get to change. You can say, okay, I'm going to take numbers 6 and 7, move them to the top 5, but then you have to drop a couple of the top 5 into what used to be spots 6 or 7. We also talk about this idea of radical responsibility, which might be hard for some people to accept. But the point here is, okay, I'll describe radical responsibility first. Radical responsibility is saying to yourself, I am, whatever I'm experiencing is my fault. Fault may be the wrong term, is my doing. Okay, whatever it is that's happening to me now, it's because I made certain choices. Could be 10 years ago, could be 5 years ago, could be yesterday. I made certain choices. I retained certain beliefs. I did or didn't do certain things, right? It could be consequences of a commission or not doing something. When you accept that you are totally responsible for what's happening to you right now, and when I say you here, what your avatar is experiencing, it gives you so much power. You are able to respond to these circumstances because you know that you have to make changes so that what your avatar experiences in the time ahead is different, right? You make a choice for what your avatar is going to experience. You have to take action or stop doing certain things so that your avatar can have those experiences going forward. So I'm hoping that you understand this, and I can anticipate many emails coming back to me saying, John, I need to talk about that. That's fine. John at playatcreation.com, write to me and we'll get into a conversation of that. Okay, so the next step is, having made these choices, is then to document them, to update these diagrams. And I'm going to show them to you. The reason for doing this is so that you, in fact, are recording your choices. And then the very final thing that we would do is to brainstorm some ventures that could give you the experiences that you've chosen to have. So this is one, the Ikigai diagram. And on this, we use the Ikigai diagram to identify a purpose that we can devote our lives to. It's a combination of what you're good at, what comes easily to you, what you love doing, what the world needs. And by world, I mean, you know, the people around you, the people that you want to serve. What problems do they have, or what opportunities might they capture? And what do they value? What are they willing to pay you to do? Where all of those things overlap, that very center is the Ikigai. That's the purpose that you can devote your life to. And this is the personal North Star. And it's on one page. You know, what is your core being? For me, like I said, it's to savor life's experiences. Around it, those rays coming out are, how am I going to serve that driving force? For me, it's to enjoy radiant health, to cherish relationships, to play always, to create ventures, and to seek out and savor beauty. For you, it could be something else. And then on the outside is, what specific activities will I do? What experiences will I have, so that I'm actually focused on extending the driving force, the center of it. Later on, I'll show you how you can get a couple of these blanks that you can play with for yourself. Okay, so we've talked about how you see yourself, and we've talked about dream. So I'm going to pause here right now to see if Louise has any questions for me to answer, and then we'll go into the last piece, which is about looking ahead. So Louise, if you could unmute yourself, please, and let me know if there are any questions that came to mind or that others have.
There are a couple of questions that came up. So earlier on, you talked about having supporters around you, but what if you don't feel like you have any supporters, like you don't have that crew that's so important to you?
Okay. And actually, this is where most people are going to start from, this idea that they are alone. One of the things I want to be able to do subsequent to this workshop and other conversations we'll have is to, in fact, establish some crews, to invite people in who right now feel that they are on their own, and to help them by creating a crew that they can join. What will happen is that you will see that there are others who are just like you. Okay, so yes, for some people, they will need help to identify people who are on their side. Good question. Good question.
Okay, there's one more question, and maybe you've answered it because you've provided so much information already, but the question is, how can you distract yourself from your thoughts?
Okay. You've heard of meditation, right? And so meditation is one way. And people do meditation different ways. And some people say, well, you're trying to empty your mind of thoughts. Well, not really, because thoughts are going to keep coming in. But in meditation, one of the things you'll want to do is to recognize that, oh, here comes that thought, right? You don't have to, remember I used the word entertain it? You don't have to entertain that thought. You can say, okay, yeah, that thought's coming. Let it go now. I want to think about that. Okay, so for instance, one of the things I have in my mind for the future is an intentional community in Costa Rica. And, following your example, Louise, is to create a vision board around that, to have pictures, to have sounds that will bring to life for me that vision. And the more intensely you can create that, I'll call it a vision board, but it doesn't have to be a board. The more intensely you can create that vision, the easier it will be for you to almost drive your thoughts to that space. People, like when you're exercising and stuff, and you're doing a particularly painful exercise, they may say, well, go to your happy place and just keep working through this. That's what you're doing, really, right? Is you're in thought going to that happy place. I'm going to my intentional community in Costa Rica where there's greenery all around me. There's wonderful smells. There's wonderful people that I'm sharing this space with. Does that answer the question, Louise?
Yep, I think that's great. And that's it for the questions, John.
Okay. Um, Addison, do you have any questions? If you do, you could unmute yourself and ask them.
I
Okay.
don't have any questions at this stage, but just happy to be here. Thanks, John.
Okay, Addison. Okay. So if those are the questions, we've got about 12 minutes more. So let's go on into the looking ahead. And Addison, I'm going to ask you, hang on a second. Let me actually advance these slides. So we've talked about introduction, why this is so important. We've talked about the process for becoming prosperous. We've talked about the dream part of this. And now we're going to be looking ahead. And this is what my suggestions to you for better days ahead. Okay, what should you be doing? And the first person I'd like to speak for a couple of minutes is Addison and what they are doing, creating Tether as an online peer support community. So Addison, if you would again unmute yourself and tell us take a couple of minutes to tell us about this.
Yeah, absolutely. And I noticed that was the first question that Louise brought up, and we see this all the time, is people feeling like they don't have a support system or sort of like a crew or a pod to kind of experience life with. And so that's something we've been working on over at Tether. We are a men's mental health and well-being app that centers around peer support and peer programming. For that very reason, there's a lot of guys that for whatever reason, do not uptake in mental health services. It's seen in the statistics. And of course, the suicide statistics for men are very overbearing, with 75% of suicides being male. So this is something that we are looking at pre-COVID and trying to find a solution to. And what we found is that men actually do respond. And specifically, I have this, for men because that's what our solution is for, but that men really do respond to peer support and having behavior modeled for them by other men. And so we created this app, which has become this whole sort of little universe, the platform where men can come and have access to 24/7 support. And it's really supposed to be sort of the tether or the through line of whatever you're doing in addition to coaching, workshops, therapy, alternative treatments. It's really something that's there and allows men to do just like this website says as it comes up, connect with other men who get it. And we are now, as of last week, we're available on both the iOS and the Google Play Store. And just this month, we actually launched similar ideas. I feel like this is something that everyone's coming to, is the idea of experientially learning as a pod together. And we're in the middle of an accountability program cohort where the men are put in groups of 5 and they learn with a coach, but they do it experientially and from that peer enabled standpoint. So yeah, that's Tether.
Thank you very much, Addison. I'm really looking forward to your success with this venture because it's going to make, I think, a huge difference, providing that peer support for guys, realizing that they don't have to do it alone. That's one of the things we found in our Being Prosperous program. There's so much valuable stuff that happens when you get people talking to each other. The next thing I want you all to do, and this is one of the top 3 things I said, who are you? Okay. I want you to adopt that creator mindset. You are not the avatar, although you can jump into the avatar and experience what they're experiencing. You can also pop out of it to decide what comes next. Okay, so you are not your avatar. Decide to choose a better story for your avatar. The second thing is is to do those dream exercises, to make deliberate choice for those things that you're going to experience in the years ahead. It starts with reflection and contemplation. Then you deliberately choose this attractive vision that's going to pull you forward, right? What you keep in your mind is what you're going to get. So what this is doing is giving you that attractive vision, that place that you can send your thoughts to rather than leaving them from what you've come from. And then what Addison was just talking about is to create your crew, friends who have your back. You're going to go through this together. The final thing, the third item that I wanted you to have was this idea called begin. I'm going to read to you a quotation which I've lived my life by for decades now. This is a quotation from a fellow named W.H. Murray, who was a Scottish mountaineer, and he wrote it in the Scottish Himalayan expedition in 1951. And it goes like this. Until one is committed, there is hesitancy, the chance to draw back. Concerning all acts of initiative and creation, there is one elementary truth, the ignorance of which kills countless ideas and splendid plans. That the moment one definitely commits oneself, then providence moves too. All sorts of things occur to help one that would never otherwise have occurred. A whole stream of events issues from that decision, raising in one's favor all manner of unforeseen incidents and meetings and material assistance, which no man could have dreamed would have come his way. Whatever you can do, or dream you can do, begin it. Boldness has genius and power and magic in it. Begin it now. So I invite you, wherever you are, in whatever state you are, take these words to heart and begin. We've come to just about 1:30, the end of the workshop. Here's how you can reach me, and through me, Addison, as well. So john@playatcreation.com. Reach out to me because I showed you that Ikigai diagram before and the personal note star. Reach out to me and I'll tell you how you can get blank Ikigai diagrams and personal note stars that you can start playing with for yourself. Did you get those 3 takeaways? Change how you see yourself. You are not your avatar, but the creator. Dream how to create an attractive vision for your future. And then to begin. I want you to claim love and hope for yourself right now, no matter what circumstances you are currently experiencing. And the why is so that you can savor life. Life is yours to savor, not to suffer through. So choose the former, choose to savor it. This workshop has been recorded, and the National Hope team will put it onto their website, so you'll be able to come back and watch it again and again. Again, if you need to reach out to me for anything that we've covered here that maybe I didn't cover well enough, please email me and we'll have a conversation. So Louise and Addison, thank you very much for being part of this presentation. I really appreciate your help. Thank you very much.